Hi everyone, good morning from Toronto. I'm from Climate Channel Toronto office. I'm Sanjay. Basically, I want to warm congratulate Mr. Kamrul Chaudhuri because he already achieved 50 episodes within a short time. It is a milestone. Any climate conversation, any global conversation, we will all again congratulate Mr. Kamrul Chaudhuri, and it is possible for you because you joined every episode, many episode. We will again congratulate everyone. I think you will stay with us. Mr. Kamrul Chaudhuri he will start formally 50 episode. We want to again congratulate Mr. Chaudhuri. Now Mr. Chaudhuri will formally start the program.
Welcome to Climate Center, Climate Conversation with Kamrul Chaudhuri, Climate Action Pathways, episode 15. This is our 50th episode in the run-up to Glasgow COP26. It is a milestone for any television channel globally to have a climate conversation on our road to Glasgow COP26, 50 episodes. So I welcome you all for joining this special episode where you have joined. All of you have joined our previous conversations, some couple of times, some once or twice or thrice. So thank you very, very much for joining this climate conversation with me for a number of times and making it possible to on our journey to Glasgow COP26. You have been in this process for many years as climate scientists, climate champions, climate negotiators, academicians, and also policymakers in very many countries, all over the globe, in different continents, in different state of highest learning and education, research. Some of you are pioneers. Especially I see Professor Alan Miller, who has been in this process for many moons, since 70s. Thomas, you are from COP residencies. Poland has the honor to host COPs for thrice, and you are one of our champion negotiators. You are also SBI chair, Substa chair, and also you are in different committees, UN convention committees, protocol committees. So, Matty, you have also been for many months in the LDC expert group in a negotiation. Rishi, you have been doing research from Tufts University, especially on climate change negotiation. David, you have been an ardent climate advocate. Scott, you have been with us for many years in the negotiation and also in different committees and also expert panels and also secretariat. Why not? Sarah, you have been trying to advocate in the run-up to Glasgow COP26 so that we can help implement Paris Agreement in a far better manner with a compact, with a simple fact that we can at least reach 1.5 degree temperature goal to keep it alive as a Paris Agreement. So with that dream, we have started this climate conversation in February this year. Now, today, in our 50th episode, we would like to keep this momentum, which has been galvanized by pre-COP and also before that, our virtual SB session and also Biden Climate Summit, UNGA, and also Climate Week. So without much ado, I would now like to ask Thomas to kick off the conversation.
Okay, thank you very much, Kamrul. And first of all, let me congratulate you, the 50th episode. It's quite a mature broadcast already, and something that, well, any artist in the world would be proud to have such a record of 50 appearances in each episode as the key character. So congratulations, you are playing the pivotal role here in the dialogue, and as usually you are doing it in a way that is, well, something that people should follow. How to make things happen, how, and as usually you are doing it in a way that is, well, something that people should follow. How to make things happen, how to bring people and make everybody like you. So that's probably the art of managing that you should share with many more, especially with those who are trying to bring together and make work together people from all over the world. So the COP process is one of those. But if we say COP process, let's not think of climate COPs only. There are other COPs, and let me start from mentioning that while we have this conversation, the other COP of the Convention on Biological Diversity is trying to struggle with the difficulties that, well, that we know very well from the protest that we are so familiar with. And well, there are, of course, big expectations before Glasgow. These expectations are partly the result of unfinished businesses that we need to finish if we want Paris Agreement to be fully implemented and to be able to deliver, because this is the most important part of this conversation, how to deliver. It looks like we are all on the same page, even those who are so-called denials or skeptics, they cannot deny extreme weather events. They cannot deny economic losses. They cannot deny the changes that are happening. And it, you know, I don't want to spend too much time on this issue, but what I want to say is before Glasgow is that we may probably need to kind of refocus our attention from delivering the messages on how badly climate change impacts everybody, economy, environment, and the planet as a whole, but rather focus on how beautiful could be the future of climate action, of the sustainable development that takes into account all the needs, all the new technologies, but also new ways of life. Let's not shy away from saying that what we are aiming at is not only about technology, it's also about understanding that we may need to change our way of living.
Okay. Thank you, Thomas. I'll come back to you again.
That's something that would hopefully make this discussion start.
Thank you very much, Thomas, for also flagging that at the same time, climate negotiation is unfolding, but also we are having biodiversity convention these days. So I would now like to go to Alan Miller, Professor Alan Miller. You have been in this field for very many months. So what is your take? Wise words, message before Glasgow COP26 to make it a successful one?
Well, thank you. And again, I want to just repeat the congratulations to you, Kwamrol, for the contributions that you've been making in promoting international dialogue and greater understanding. In anticipation for this conversation, I was reflecting back a little bit, as one tends to do in old age, and remembering that at the World Resource Institute, where I was for several years in the mid-'80s, at a time when we were working toward the Montreal Protocol, we were able to get what was, to my knowledge, the first transatlantic meeting of NGOs to discuss ozone depletion. This was in 1985, supported by the German Marshall Foundation. And I think it is one of the positive things that has happened and is related to this group today, which is partly because technology has allowed us, but really you don't have to go back that far into the 1980s, when there was very, very little collaboration across communities, and there was very little common recognition of our shared interest in planetary challenges, even initially ozone depletion, much less climate change. And the fact that we now have, through the Climate Action Network and David's organization, the World Wildlife Fund, which has done really admirable work, just an extraordinary difference in the level of shared knowledge and organizing. And let me just, in closing, say I'm not going to COP26. I have done my share. I went to 18 COPs, as well as the precursor negotiations that preceded the convention. And I'm quite happy to see a younger generation carrying the ball now. But what gives me the most hope, and partly I think because of my teaching, has been to just see the extraordinary difference in the level of energy and understanding that I have from my students, that I see from the youth organizations for climate change that have followed the efforts of Greta Thunberg and others. And I think, you know, the good news and bad news is there's a lot more energy and effort working on this. The bad news is we really are running out of time. And what makes me most interested in COP26 is that, as Ambassador Kerry has said, it is our last best hope, in that if we don't get more agreements very rapidly, then there's just no way we can stay below 2 degrees, much less 1.5. So I will anxiously await the comments of the distinguished remainder of this group, Kwamrol, and again, just extend my congratulations to you and for what you've been doing.
Thank you very much, Alan. And also recalling the Montreal Protocol, recalling the days of, setting up World Resource Institute in the 80s. So those are fond memories, and on those ideas, on those learning curve, we have traveled down many miles, thousands of miles, and we have to go many more miles. David McCulley, WWF, you have been in this arena for decades. So what is your wealth of experience you can share right now, right here?
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. Appreciate the invitation, and my congratulations as well on your steadfast devotion to this cause. I guess my biggest takeaway is there's so much happening outside of the negotiations that it gives me hope, but also that somehow the work that's going on in the business community and in the finance community to acknowledge the need to get onto a net zero pathway and to set milestones long before 2050 and meet those milestones gives encouragement. I just hope that somehow the COP itself can bring that together. I saw in Madrid, the first sort of public direct engagement of the finance community. I think it's positive that the finance ministers are really through this coalition of finance ministers for climate action, for example, are really sort of elevating their attention. And in the private sector, we see progressive companies, I think, taking on pledges and so forth. Of course, those have to become Greta-proof. They have to actually turn into action. And that's where those milestones, early milestones come. I think the finance sector as well is recognizing that it's in their own interest, but they're a little bit slower. It's easy to make commitments. So we'll see if somehow the real world can meet up and markets can meet up with what's happening with the standard setting within the convention, then I'm quite optimistic about this COP. It's the last one I'm sure I will attend, Alan. Anyway, thanks.
Thank you, David. Rishi, so what is your take? Especially, what do you think as a Southern, you're young researcher, academics, and also following climate change, following climate finance. What is your reflection?
Thank you so much. And let me also echo congratulations to you for having done 50 episodes already. And thank you for inviting all of us to join you today. I would like to just say, a couple of things. The first thing is very much, I think, strongly on the minds of many governments around the world, and it continues to be the pandemic. And I think that very much, is the operating landscape that we have right now. And so thinking of things outside of the COP that will influence not just engagement, at the COP itself, but also how much actual headroom governments have to think about ambitious policies, because we really are seeing potentially diverging pathways where the industrialized world may be recovering at a far faster, a quicker pace than the developing world. And so I think that's something we really have to pay attention to and to really work hard to minimize, because if it takes a long time to rebound to pre-pandemic levels, that's just going to reduce the appetite significantly. And so I think we really have to be paying attention to this background, operating condition in a sense. The second thing in which we, perhaps in the climate change community don't pay enough attention to is some of the developments happening at the IMF. And specifically what I mean by that is there's ongoing discussions about a resilience and sustainability trust, which may, be somewhere around $100 billion. And so I think there is a major opening for us to really shape the conversation on how, such a particular trust could actually work. And so I hope, through this channel, more people in the climate change community start paying attention to this particular development at the IMF. And so the third piece, which is also in a sense adjacent to the process, is the importance of climate and debt swaps that hopefully we'll see proposals, before the COP. And so I think in addition to, of course, dealing with the pandemic, making sure that governments have their own domestic resources that's inherently tied to their external debt profiles. And so I think, having some kind of a climate debt swap proposal out there would, I think, be very, important to help all of these pieces fall in line. And so let me stop there for now.
Thank you, Rishi. Scott Willis. Scott.
Congratulations on your golden anniversary, my friend. And again, thank you for convening this process. It's great to sort of bring together both negotiators, current and past, but also strong NGO voices and other members from the community who come together, bring their expertise, bring their blood, sweat, and tears into it. So it's more dialogue is always a good thing. So more channels like this one, I think would be we would be better for it. I mean, looking ahead to COP, it's as Thomas said, there's reason for optimism, and I think that we do need to be focused on solutions. We do need to be focused on the good work that is happening outside of the process. This can't simply be a matter of whether developed countries have delivered on their commitment and whether we hit the temperature target in 3 weeks' time. That can't be what all of this is about. There needs to be a celebration and encouragement. We need to make the tent bigger. We need to recognize that there are a lot of players involved in this. I mean, 30 years ago, we got together in Rio and built up this process, and then realized that climate change doesn't exist in a vacuum. Climate, we're talking about things that touch every aspect of our lives, and it's important to consider that the solution space sort of involves those other players as well, and whether that's other UN agencies, the private sector, the NGO community. To Rishi's point, I mean, I would love to see central banks more involved. There needs to be better bilateral cooperation, more coordination. There's a lot of good work going on, and I think there is reason for optimism. Looking forward to the meeting itself and also to the discussion coming forward. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Scott. Matthew.
Yes, there. Clicking wrong place in my screen. Well, yeah, thanks, Kamrul, and I'm really honored that you have been inviting me to your show several times, and really congratulations that you have done this. So from my point of view, one thing which is not mentioned yet in these discussions, what has happened outside, is one decision or the recognition of the UN Human Rights Council, which is quite fresh, couple of days old, which means that they recognize now the human rights as a healthy environment to be a human right. That means that maybe several constitutions or laws must be changed on this basis, and it was an unanimous decision. So it really affects, and I also, when I'm looking what's happening in my country now, there is a lot of young people on the streets demonstrating. And one thing what the Human Rights Council said already a couple of years ago, that environment defenders should be considered as human rights defenders, and that is, well, I must admit that the behavior of police in Finland has not been as such which it could be, and I think that the same thing is in many other places. So actually those people, they are defending the human rights, and one thing what I feel really important in Paris Agreement is the recognition of the rights of the future generations. And I haven't seen that in Biodiversity Convention, and really what we see that if the extension rate and the biodiversity loss is going this speed, so actually we are destroying the rights of the youth, of the future generations. So that's my start.
Thank you, Matti. Sarah.
Thanks, Kamral, and again, congratulations. And it's been a pleasure and a privilege to have been invited, not just today, but on previous occasions. It really is a fantastic opportunity to talk to and engage with so many experts with so many different perspectives from around the world. So congratulations. From my side, I think I'm looking forward to the COP, but having said that, multilateralism is difficult in any circumstance. But we are in extraordinary times, and COP26 is going to be an extraordinary COP, hopefully for the right reasons. But we'll have to wait and see until we get to the 13th of November, whether it's extraordinary for the right reasons. I think Scott and David and Rishi have already alluded to the fact that there are so many things happening outside of the COP process. And I think that's incredibly important as we move away from, the technical aspects of the negotiations and into the doing part of climate action, into the implementation and the accountability. So where we sit and where my organisation sits, we are really very optimistic about the fact that the Paris Agreement is working, that the signal has been transmitted and it is being received and people are acting on it. And Scott, you spoke about, what the businesses are doing. Rishi, you spoke about what finance is doing. And I think it's a recognition of the maturation of climate. It's not just in the green box anymore. It's everything everywhere. And it's in the IMF discussions. It's in the World Bank discussions. It's in human rights discussions. It's in trade discussions. It's elevated to the highest level at the G20. And I think that's really exciting because it means that, the issues that we have all worked on for such a very long time are now at the right political level for us to be able to tackle the scale of the challenge that we're all facing. And so I don't think that would have happened if we hadn't have got the Paris Agreement. So people can talk about, it's sort of one step forward and two steps back, but I'm genuinely optimistic that this is on the right agendas in the right places with the right people now. It's just whether we can do things quick enough. David, you spoke about, 2 degrees, never mind 1.5. I think, we all know that we're in the decade of action now. And I think what Glasgow really has to deliver on is an accelerated review and ratchet process. And Kumral, I know that you've been very closely involved with the Climate Vulnerable Forum and the manifesto around, an annual acknowledgement and an updating of NDCs and what that process needs to look like. And I think that's where we're heading. And again, it's sort of that level of maturation in the conversation. We almost need COP to become like an annual State of the Climate Union moment where we have, a totalizing of what's happening on finance, what's happening with the NDCs and what's happening in clean transformation with all of the other initiatives. And I think it's all about implementation and accountability now. And many countries are starting to do that. For example, the Danes, they require their climate minister to come back annually and talk about how they're getting on in setting their targets. And I think it would be quite an innovation to have that kind of thing done through the forcing mechanism of the UNFCCC and through the annual COP process. So thank you very much. They're my first set of remarks.
Thank you, Sarah. Professor Alan.
Yes. I'm totally absorbed in what others have been saying, and especially appreciate the emphasis on the non-state actors that has evolved. I would also add to that the subnational actors and the significance of, especially in the United States, when we had 4 years of nothingness at the top of the government, we did have a steady increase in the commitments made by states and cities, reflecting a significant share of the population and the economy. I also would really maybe just briefly go back to what Tomas said in his opening remarks about the value of perhaps focusing more on the opportunity and the positive future that is embodied in viewing the world through the potential for the global transformation to a clean energy system. Just this week, California Governor Newsom, in talking about dealing with the oil spill there, pointed out that in his state, the number of jobs from renewables and energy efficiency are now 5 times the jobs associated with fossil fuel. And I think we're going to see that description gradually becoming relevant even more to developing countries where as this transformation takes hold. So those would be my remaining remarks. I apologize, Kwamrul. I told you I had another commitment. So I'm very glad that I was able to join you for this, and look forward to future. I'm sure this will not be the last of your conversations, and particularly, hopefully we will all be celebrating the fantastic outcomes that, how many of you will be in? Maybe brief show of hands. I know David said he's going to Glasgow. Sarah, Scott, any of the others? Tomas, no? You're not? He doesn't know. In any case, I think we will certainly have the basis for a post-COP conversation as well. And maybe also, if I might just point to one of the, the one other thing that I personally have worked on a lot in the past year or so has been a focus much more on short-lived climate pollutants. And it's been extremely encouraging lately to have seen, for example, the methane pledge that the United States and EU have formed, and the significance of that being that, of course, for the next decade or two, reducing CO2 is going to have almost no effect on warming. And I always hate to say that because it sounds like, well, one could draw the conclusion that there's no point in reducing CO2 when exactly the opposite is true. But because of the associated sulfates and the unmasking, et cetera, the issue for now is going to be accelerating the methane reductions, HFCs, and black carbon. And I think we are beginning to see a serious recognition of that, which in terms of the next 2 decades will probably be the best hope we have for meeting the Paris goals. So with that, I apologize. I'm going to leave what has been, as always, a really terrific discussion.
Thank you very much, Professor Alan, for joining us. And also thank you for flagging the methane short-lived, and also a couple of previous conversations. So we also emphasize on synergies between other conventions, other protocols, say Montreal Protocol, say Biodiversity, Biological Diversity Convention, and also say Desertification Convention, and other conventions, and also other processes, the DRR, disaster risk reduction. So all these should be looked at simultaneously, so that we can have synergies. We can have co-benefits.
Yes.
And also explore for nature-based solutions. And research, a lot of research, a lot of, and also emphasis on education, motivation, inspiration, so that non-state actors can also take forward all these issues onto the ground, onto the communities. Community leaders, local governments, they should be involved more rigorously. Subnational institutions. So these are the key messages we should take forward. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all. Bye-bye.
David. David, I think
yes,
you have also been in Asian Development Bank and also in different continents. So that perspective, I think we should also look for, so that that is also anchored in the, climate parlance. David.
Yeah, there's I guess some encouraging developments on moving away from coal in Asia. That is needs to be carried into the COP in order to build on that momentum in terms of the transformation and decarbonization and moving away from reliance on fossil fuels. Early steps still, but significant. The media has picked up on China and Korea and Japan and so forth. We need to keep that momentum going. It's going to be extremely expensive to move away from existing coal capacity, and even harder politically to move away from plans for development of future, coal-fired power that's already on the books. I'm also very just on the nature-based side of things and trying to combine net zero with nature positive and climate resilient. I think it's discouraging to see what's happening in the Convention on Biological Diversity. I think they need leadership coming out of the COP26 and UNFCCC experience, even with all of its problems, because they're very, they're trying to get their own. They're trying to, they're saying that they don't care about nature-based solutions for climate. They want their own money for biodiversity. I think it's quite negative, frankly. And I'm hoping that a positive outcome. My colleague Manuel Pulgar Vidal at WWF keeps pushing hard for positive storylines, real progress, but that can be picked up as momentum for the planet coming out of COP26. So let's hope for that.
Doing some work for the PCCB. The biggest challenge is getting finance in order to build capacity. So ensuring that there really does need to be a focus that the Paris rule books agreed. So there needs to be some arm twisting behind.
They're saying that they don't.
The biggest challenge we had was securing finance. I'm doing some work for the PCCB. The biggest challenge is getting finance in order to build capacity. So ensuring that there really does need to be a focus that the Paris rule books agreed. So there needs to be some arm twisting behind the scenes in terms of making sure that we close off Article 6, we finish off the details for the ETF. There are sort of little things like that I the common time frames. I think that there needs to be some very frank, very small room conversations in terms of what a package coming out of the COP could look like that would be agreeable and naturally focused on, okay, if 100 billion is, if 100 billion is the number, what are the plans to mobilize 500 billion in the next 5 years? There needs to be something with teeth. There needs to be something that countries can take back to their governments, to their private sectors, to their communities, to their educational institutions, to their subnational governments to say that, listen, progress was made. We made the tent bigger. We're bringing more and more people involved. There's a focus on partnerships. I'm working with the UN Industrial Development Organization on developing a climate strategy for them, and there is a lot of good work. UNOPS on partnerships, WFP on agriculture, UNIDO on industrial decarbonization. Not just making the tent bigger, but empowering the people who are in the tent to take bold action. The UNFCCC is a place where sort of commitments are made and a lot of commas are moved. But there really does need to be a message that coming out of COP26, there was recognition in the COP26 package that we're in this together, or there is a role for everyone to play. We're going to focus on solutions. So getting a sense of what that realistically needs to look like. It probably means getting the Chinese and the Americans in a room, because that frankly was the biggest, the French diplomatic corps in the run up to COP50 or COP. Apologies for the dog, but the G2 meeting in September of 2015 was vital to success. So there's a lot of work to be done behind the scenes, and it's an exciting time, but it's also a stressful time. It's really important work, and they're the only ones who can do it.
Thank you, Scott, for flagging a lot of things and also a lot of to-dos for, say, Glasgow COP26 presidency. Rishikesh Bhandari. Rishi.
Sure. I actually, I think, fully agree with what Scott just said, and also David, in terms of the movement we've seen in moving away from coal. This is, I guess, initially, countries themselves have been reducing the demand, but also the announcement from China. And so I think these are all, extremely positive, signals going in. And I think perhaps an assumption that we've been making is, the minute you stop funding coal, all of a sudden the money is going to move to renewables, and we know that's not the case. And so I think there is a very clear need to really attack that assumption and say, what would be the requirements to have in place to ensure that clean energy does get the financing it needs, and that stopping funding for coal is not enough. And also just to sort of underscore some of the things that, Scott just mentioned in terms of making sure, carbon market rules and so on are fully closed, so that those are no longer lingering and potentially give, detractors of the process an excuse to say, you still haven't finished some of these basic housekeeping rules. So I think if Glasgow can sort of, finish on some of these pending items, I think that would really help provide the overall momentum that I think we badly need coming out of this process.
Thank you, Rishi. Matty.
Thanks, Kamru. Well, I don't know, is this some kind of final position, but in any case, I would like to take one example from my country, which has been quite heated discussion recently, is about the agriculture. And many other sectors have proceeded quite quickly and managed to reduce their CO2 emissions, but agriculture has been lacking behind. And there is also the EU new agricultural strategy, which is under discussion, and really, I would say that agriculture would be technically a low-hanging fruit. Politically, it's not low-hanging fruit, but because it means that the current incentives should be reallocated so that it supports really climate-friendly agriculture, and well, we know that it's discussed in UNFCCC, but still I think that its guidance, what it gets from there, is not very strong. So I can stop here.
Thank you. Sarah.
Thank you, Cromwell. I wanted to build on what Scott was saying about us all being in it together. I think my concern is that the UK presidency is organising this World Leaders Summit segment for the first 2 days of the COP. And if we don't have all of the leaders attending for that, for whatever reason, that immediately takes some of the impetus out of it, because then we're not all in it together because some leaders chose not to come. And I think that's incredibly dangerous. However, I think it's, the onus is on the UK to try and make that happen. And I think politically, it will be a really, really important signal for the rest of the fortnight of COP. If we get something that is weak or disappointing or a little bit too much motherhood and apple pie from that World Leaders Summit segment, whether it's a repetition of what we've heard at UNGA, if it's weaker language than we're expecting from the G20 meeting, just the weekend before that takes place, that sets a very bad precedent for then closing out some of the things that Scott spoke about on the technical aspects of the negotiation, because then you don't have that clear consensus signal from all the leaders that they have heeded the IPCC Code Red, that they have heeded the climate emergency, that they have heeded the Climate Vulnerable Forum call for a climate emergency pact. And I think without that, the court of public opinion will be very much in the side of Greta, when she talked about blah, blah, blah. If we don't have a good concrete outcome from COP26, it will just be, hashtag just another summit. And it will be incredibly difficult to respond, with a robust answer to the youth who are calling for, a particular level of ambition, but not just target setting, in the doing and in the political will to do so. So I think there is a lot for the UK presidency to be doing. I speak to my former colleagues. I used to work in the UK government on the climate negotiations, and many of them are. So I think there is a lot for the UK presidency to be doing. I speak to my former colleagues. I used to work in the UK government on the climate negotiations, and many of them are, they're putting in the hard yards. They have been putting in the hard yards, but I said it before and I'll say it again, it's an extraordinary COP in extraordinary times. But if we don't respond and respond robustly, John Kerry's words will come to pass. This is our sort of last best chance. We are running out of time. Thank
you. It's me. Huh?
Thank you, Thomas. You
wise words.
Last message.
Well, that was fascinating experience to listen to all of you, and I think that collectively we have touched upon, in fact, all major issues ahead of the COP, and all major issues that are kind of included in the climate process DNA. All these COPs are just another summit, because they all have very important administrative functions. These COPs secure continuity of the process, continuity of actions that every country has to deliver, report, present, etc., etc. So let's not downside the role of the COPs just because we don't have the breakthrough. Well, that's good to have a breakthrough, but how many breakthroughs do we have? We have unfinished businesses. And this particular COP, the biggest task ahead of this COP is probably to bring back, let's say, the normal to the process, which means all the surveys, all the reviews, all the presentations, all the processes that have already been decided in the past that result in certain activities to be undertaken by the COP. And these activities have to happen because they prove that what countries are doing is useful, successful, and needed. It's important to underline that, well, let's say, eagerness of certain groups to see all the problems solved at the same time may lead to some disappointments, because it's pretty obvious that we cannot please everybody and we cannot respond every single question and every single problem raised ahead of the gathering. What's important? I'm particularly pleased when I heard from Alan that even if we stopped emitting CO2 tomorrow, the temperature would go up for the next 100 years probably. And we badly need to buy time to slow down the warming process and if possible reverse it. And the only way to do it is to cut methane, cut HFCs, cut black carbon. There are scientific evidence that this kind of action would help us to reduce at least by 0.5 degree, at least. And this is what is badly needed. Otherwise, we cannot stop permafrost from melting and releasing God knows how big amounts of methane into atmosphere, then making the situation probably unmanageable. We don't know. So this is very important. And what is also very important, that and what worries me personally, is that the whole discussions about implementation of Paris, well, we are now focusing on Article 6, and this is very much needed. We need the cooperation framework that would make not only countries and governments cooperate, but also businesses, cities, municipalities, all kind of groupings should cooperate in order to stop bad development. But we have Article 5 in Paris Agreement. Article 5 that is telling us that we need to enhance carbon sinks. By the way, the word carbon is being used in the entire Paris Agreement only twice in Article 5 and refers to carbon sinks. It's very important article that does not have any implementation framework. And forest is only just one of the ecosystems that is able to absorb atmospheric carbon. So unless we do something on methane, unless we do something on soil quality and biodiversity, on forests, on oceans, on seawater loans, we won't be able to achieve what is the key provision of Paris Agreement. We won't be able to achieve climate neutrality. And that's what should worry everybody. So from my perspective, if Glasgow COP could find the way even to initiate the work, the thinking on how to implement Article 5 and what kind of metrics should be used to assess successful or not our climate action is, that would be another delay, another loss of time. And I have last impression after so many years in this process, both on European level and globally, that we have a certain number of keywords. Environmental integrity is one of my favorites. Environmental integrity, whenever mentioned, was always assisted. We have to ensure environmental integrity, which means the tone is a tone. Well, that's quite obvious that tone is a tone. But are we talking about fiduciary integrity, fiduciary standards, or we are talking about integrity across all aspects of sustainability, including social integrity, economic, and environmental, that goes across all elements of climate system, which is not just atmosphere, as some lawyers were tending to say. Well, that's why black carbon is out of our view in climate convention, because it's not a gas. And we are just focusing on atmosphere. No, climate system is atmosphere, biosphere, hydrosphere, and geosphere, all together in all interactions amongst them. And this is climate convention that says that. So we have to come back to the roots, to the origins, to read again the convention, read again the Kyoto Protocol, read very carefully Paris Agreement with its preamble, which explains why we are agreeing, why it is so important, why is science important, why is just transition important, and the importance of these provisions should be very well explained. And explanation seems to be quite obvious. We can do it in a way that is prescribed, or it won't happen. And this is my message to the COP26. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Thomas. With that, I would now like to thank you again, all the panelists, to join this 50th conversation with me at Climate Center. And hopefully at Glasgow COP26, our road to Glasgow will be quite smooth, and at Glasgow we can navigate all the issues mentioned in this conversation quite successfully. And yes, we can have a better tomorrow. We deserve that, and we can deliver that. Hopefully in Glasgow COP26, we can shine. Even we can outshine for the mankind, for our posterity, for our future generations. Not only in climate convention, but also biological diversity convention, desertification convention, Montreal Protocol, and other protocols, DRR, all fronts, so that a sustainable development is achieved by all countries, all parties, all continents. No one is leaving behind. With that message, I think our 50th episode ends here, closes here. Thank you very much. for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
nice
very much,
to
everyone.
see you here. It's good. Thank you.
See you again.
Yeah, Shara, David.
Bye-bye.
It's good. Matty, Rishi.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye, Kamrul. Bye, guys.
Bye.